Elden Ring has a lot of items you can collect by defeating certain enemies and collecting them off of dead bodies, but bell bearings are probably one of the more unique ones you can find. I'm going to cover where you can find all of the different bell bearings inside of Elden Ring before the DLC drops in June. That way you can have as many items as possible before you start the DLC. Let's get into it. Now, since there are a lot of different bell bearings scattered across this giant world of Elden Ring, we're just going to jump right into it. The first one you can find very early on in the game by Merchant Kale. Now, the unfortunate thing is the only way you can get his bell bearing is if you kill him. This will be the same for all the other merchants inside of Elden Ring, so I really don't recommend you actually kill them to get these bell bearings because they're more useful alive and their inventory is much larger than what you're going to get from the bell bearings themselves when you turn them in. I will still cover all the different locations of the merchants so you can decide for yourself, but I'm just telling you this ahead of time. Your first Nomad merchant outside of Kale is going to be right next to St. Bridge inside of Limgrave. Simply cross this bridge and you'll see him on the right side, just over a tiny cliff. Second merchant can be found in the forest inside of Limgrave, which is going to be next to one of the areas you can go down into the underground area and in between Fort Height and some of the ruins. He's right next to a campfire with his donkey. Again, very hard to miss. Number 3 can be found on the coast right next to where you start the game. He's going to be underneath one of the areas you can use to jump down onto this coastline. But if you go at night, you'll easily be able to see his fire and he's just hanging out underneath this giant piece of a fallen castle. 4 can be found very quickly when you get to the Weeping Peninsula. It might be one of the first ones you come across as you make your way all the way down south in this area. He's one of the easier ones to find because his campfire will be right next to the site of grace that I was just showing you on the map. Number 5 can be found at the Liurnia Lakeshore Site of Grace. This can be very easy to see him because, again, he's right next to this Site of Grace. Number 6 can be easily overlooked, especially if you don't go a certain path from this particular Site of Grace at that Bellum Church. You're going through the Bellum Church, you'll see a cliff that gets you down onto the smaller cliff where you're going to actually end up seeing this merchant underneath some fallen rubble as well. Number 7 is also near a Site of Grace at the Altus Plateau, specifically the forest-spanning Great Bridge Site of Grace. Now, all you have to do, similar to other ones, get to this Site of Grace, turn around, and he's going to be right next to a campfire, right next to this Site of Grace. Number 8 can also be easily overlooked. He's going to be on a cliff in the volcanic area as you're starting to make your way towards the volcanic manor. Easily find him, go from the Site of Grace, first Mount Gelmir campsite, I'm probably going to butcher it, follow the pathing I'm showing you over the giant fallen piece of rock, and you're going to go and see a bunch of different ladders. Take the left side of the ladders, you'll eventually come across him just hanging out with his donkey and a campfire on one of the smaller cliffs. Moving back south, we're going to go to Kale to find number 9. Right next to the Astray from Kale Highway North Site of Grace, you're going to want to go to the right towards the giant swamp. You're going to find the nomadic merchant hanging out right on one of the cliffs. And finally, number 10 is also in Kale, just a little farther south from where we just were in Kale. You're going to find him at this little intersection where it looks like a triangle of a crossroads. He's very easy to find. Quickly moving to the 3 isolated merchants. One is very easy to find in the Weeping Peninsula at the isolated merchant shack. Simply get to this area and you'll see him hanging out inside of this shack. Keep these shack locations in mind because they're going to come up a little bit later for other bell bearings later on in this video. Isolated merchant 2 is going to be a little tricky to find for the first time. What you want to do is make your way to the main Academy Gate Site of Grace and essentially backtrack back down the giant bridge that you travel across. So when you spawn at this Site of Grace, turn around where you see the blue marker, go all the way down the bridge until you come across the merchant hanging up by a fire. He's also really going to go and visit because he has a couple items that are used to open up some of the towers throughout the game, so keep him in mind for other reasons. Number 3 is out in Kale on top of a hill overlooking one of the Colosseums that we don't get to go into, unfortunately. Thankfully, this location also has the Site of Grace, so it makes it very easy to get back to him anytime you want to go to his inventory. Next, we have 3 Hermit merchants. One of them is going to be a Hermit merchant shack. Again, keep in mind the shack location. This is going to be in the Altus Plateau inside of the walls that are used for protection for the major city in this game. Going way north to the mountaintop of the Giants, or the snowy area as I like to call it, you're going to make your way to the specific location that I just pinpointed on the map just south of the Stargazer's ruins. Now, thankfully, this is very easy to get to. Just follow the pathing that I'm showing you down the cliffside and you'll eventually come across the fire that has the merchant. Now, Hermit number 3 is going to be found in the underground areas and more specifically the Ainsel River location of the underground locations. You'll know you're in the right location when you see these columns along with one of the gravity monsters that hangs from the ceiling start shooting different rocks at you. Underneath this particular monster, you'll see this guy camping out in this area. Now, the final 2 merchants are going to be labeled something a little bit different than the other ones that we've talked about so far. This guy, the abandoned merchant, can be found in the normal location that you first enter for the underground area, right where I pinged the map, and there's only one way you can get to him. You need to find the part of the bridge that has the scaffolds on them, and by going through the entire process, going up the scaffolds, doing a couple jumps and into the cliffside, you'll be able to see a room that opens up with a bunch of columns. In there, you're going to find this merchant without a dog key and without a fire lit, looking kind of sad. And finally, the last merchant we have is the Imprisoned merchant, which is inside of the little catacombs that we have underneath the Mohgwyn Palace, which again is a very specific area that can only be accessed two different ways. Whenever you do get to the Mohgwyn Palace, though, he's easy enough to find. From the halfway point side of Grace, before you go up the lift to go and face Mohg, simply make your way back inside and essentially backtrack your way to where you first started. An easy way to find him is that you'll hear him playing his mandolin, or the longest corridor in this entire catacomb area. Now that was a lot of merchants, but let's quickly talk about some of the enemies that show up at these shacks that I was mentioning earlier. The enemies that show up at these shacks and also at the Church of Vows is going to be something called the Peddler bell bearings, and these guys are going to be very difficult to fight. They're not easy boss fights. They only show up at night as well, so keep that in mind. You'll know that these guys are about to spawn when the NPCs that are normally in this area are no longer there, and then you start to have someone invade your game. Defeat them however you can, you will get one of the 4 Peddler bell bearings. For this one at the Church of Vows is going to be the Meat Peddler bell bearing. The Medicine Peddler bell bearing is found by fighting the mini boss at the Hermit shack, which is just outside of Lindell. The Gravity Stone bell bearing can be found by fighting the mini boss at the Isolated Merchant shack, which is in Kale on that giant hill that we talked about a little bit earlier in this video. And the War Master's shack inside of Lindell. This is a location we haven't visited yet in this video, but it is not too hard to find, especially if you experience the entire area of Lindell. This will probably be your easiest of these 4 mini bosses, and this one's actually going to drop the Bone Peddler bell bearing. Now that we've gone through a couple different fights, let's get into some more inside of a bunch of different tunnels, where we're going to start going after the Smithstone bell bearings that gives you smithing stones to upgrade your weapons. First one is in the Rayalu Karyo Crystal tunnel. It's a little difficult to find, but take your time because you need to get through this entire tunnel and defeat the boss down here, which is actually a very easy boss. You will get the Smithstone bell bearing number 1. The second could be found at the Altus Plateau inside of the sealed tunnel, which is right next and right outside of the main capital, and it'll be very easy to find this one because it's inside a chest. From the side of Grace, simply make your way inside of the first main tunnel, curve a right, and you'll see a chest just hanging out next to a wall, and that is where you're going to find this bell bearing. Number 3 can be found in the Zamor ruins at the mountaintop of the Giants. Be prepared, some of these enemies are not that easy to kill, and there does become a bit numerous of them, especially when you try and get to the back of these Zamor ruins and find the stairs that you need to go down to get you into another room that has a chest that you will get this bell bearing in. The easiest way I think about it when you're looking at the Zamor ruins on the map is on the bottom left side of the entire ruin. So you'll find it eventually because the staircase is lit up by the only torches in this entire area. And number 4 can only be obtained by defeating everyone's favorite duo, the Godskin duo inside of Crumbling Farum Azula. The goal is obvious and simple, just defeat them. Actually doing that, and maybe not so much. So since we covered all the bell bearings for the regular smithing stones, let's move on to the bell bearings for the Somber smithing stones, which is used for your more magical weapons. You're going to need to get to Kale for the first one in the Celia Crystal Tunnel, which is simple enough to find. At the bottom in this tunnel, you're going to come across a Falling Star Beast, which is going to be in the boss room. I had already defeated and my vial got corrupted when I was recording it, but nonetheless, you have to get to this area, defeat this Falling Star Beast, and you will get your first Somber smithing stone bell bearing. Your second bell bearing can be found at the Altus Tunnel, which is on the Altus Plateau, right outside of Lindell. And in here, the boss fight, you have 2 crystalline enemies. One is not that hard, and the other one is more of an annoyance than anything, but defeat them and you'll get your second bell bearing. Number 3 is actually found inside of the mountaintop of the Giants, just outside the First Church America, which is at the farthest right point inside of the mountaintop of the Giants. Literally all you have to do is get to the area, you'll find a dead body with an item on it, simply loot this body, and this is going to be the bell bearing that you're looking for. Easiest one so far. Number 4 is back in Crumbling Farum Azul, and just outside of the Tempest facing balcony side of Grace, a very easy one to find as well, because all you have to do is get to this side of Grace, walk over to the body that is on the edge, and on this body, the item that it is showing is going to be the bell bearing that you're looking for. Number 5 is also in Crumbling Farum Azul, but a very specific location in Crumbling Farum Azul. It's going to be just underneath the final bridge before you go into the major boss of this area. To let you know the pathing that you would normally take when you first get here, go from the Dragon Temple balcony, follow the pathing I'm showing you on the cursor, which is just leading you past the Ancient Dragon, a couple different beastmen that are resting, but it'll bring you to this church that is crumbling down. Simply go inside, defeat 3 different enemies of beastmen in here, and on the body that's resting next to this altar, it's going to have the Somber smithing stone bell bearing number 5. All of those different smithing stone bell bearings are going to get you version 1 through 9, not the final form, the final stone that you're going to need to upgrade your weapon to the max level, but it gets you pretty dang close. So that's really the reason I wanted to make sure we covered those in detail, because these are going to be very helpful when you go into the DLC, when you want to upgrade all those new weapons. Now, along with new weapons we'll get in DLC, we're probably going to get brand new summons as well. So that's where these Glovewort Picker bell bell bearings come in handy. The first one you're going to find in the Windham Catacombs near the Volcanic Manor. In this area, in the boss room, you're going to come across one of the guard dogs, one of those stone dogs that shoots lightning and slams down either a giant hammer or sickle. Either way, you have to defeat this and it will give you your first one of these bell bearings. Number 2 is back on the mountaintops of the Giants. Is actually in the Giants Mountaintop Catacombs, which can easily be found before you go over that giant bridge over to the major area of the mountaintop of the Giants. Simply go to the right down a little bit of a hill and you'll see the catacombs right on against the wall. In here, you're going to have to fight one of those annoying tree spirits. You'll get a golden seed, but also the Glovewort Picker's bell bearing number 2. Number 3 is going to be in Crumbling Farum Azula in a very specific location in this area. You're going to see one location with looks like kind of like a puddle or a little bit of a tiny lake. Next to this tiny body of water, you're going to see a single gazebo in there. There's going to be an item. You pick it up. It's going to be the third and final Glovewort Picker bell bearing. Now, just like there are different types of weapons, there are also different types of summons. Some are actually technically ghosts. First one, you're going to find the bell bearing that gives you the plants that helps you upgrade those ghost type summons. Get to Nokron, which is accessed after you have defeated Radahn, and simply make your way to the city. When it first introduces the city, when you open up those giant doors, there will be another gazebo. There will be a body just to the left of the gazebo that you can pick this item up on. Number 2 is found in Noxtella, the Eternal City. There's a couple different ways to get here. Whenever you do get here from this site of grace, make your way up to the first set of buildings that you see. First square building that you're actually able to get into is going to have a bunch of different enemies that are the silver tiers just hanging out in there waiting for you to jump in. There's going to be a lot of them, probably about 10, but when you defeat them, open up the chest and you're going to have this second bell bearing. And number 3 is probably the farthest one of all the bell bearings that you can get in this game. You're going to have to make your way all the way over to the Haligtree, arguably one of the most difficult locations in the game. From the Haligtree root site of grace, up the elevator that's right next to this site of grace, make your way out to this area. You'll see a bunch of those different centipede looking enemies. I hate them a lot. I know you guys do as well, but make your way to the bottom part of this hill where there's going to be one tombstone that has one item on it, and this is going to be your final bell bearing for the ghost type summons. Again, all these different bell bearings get the items that upgrade summons. Now that we've gone and found all the different bell bearings from different merchants and stuff for upgrading, let's start with all the different NPCs in the game. The first one we're going to start with is Cohyrn, who is the holy man that you first meet at the round table. And you can get his bell bearing a couple different ways. One, you could just straight up kill him. 2, you can go through his entire quest line, or if you burn down the Erdtree, you can find him in different locations. To clarify, if you burn down the Erdtree before completing his quest line, he just straight up dies, and wherever he is at that moment, however far you've progressed him in his storyline, he will end up dropping his loot there. First one is at that Altus Plateau location I just showed you. The second is going to be at the Long Bridge, where you first meet the Noble Gold Mask. Third could be in the mountaintops of the Giants, right at this particular bridge, right next to the Stargazer's ruins. Fourth could be next to the Coliseum in the Lindell capital, where you will actually end up having him be in the last location you find him before you turn the capital to ash. And if you've completed his storyline, when you do turn the capital ash, you'll find him right where I'm pointing now in the capital. You'll be able to talk to him and eventually get his bell bearing there. The next NPC on the list is also someone you meet very early on in the game. When you first get to the round table, it's going to be D, the one who hunts those that live in death. He'll be the one wearing the silver and gold armor. It looks like he's cradling somebody else on the armor. Very easy to find. To get his bell bearing, you either need to 1, progress the game until you burn down the Erdtree, or 2, progress his storyline enough that he gets stabbed by Fia and he will drop his bell bearing in one of the locked rooms in the round table hold. Rogier is another NPC that you become friends with very early on in the game when you go through Stormveil Castle. Very quickly he starts to become impaired after you've completed this Stormveil, and you'll find him in the location that I'm showing you here inside of the round table hold. Now he is part of D's questline as well, but over time he's eventually just going to end up in the state that you see him, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Yes, you can kill him earlier on in the game if you really want to, but this is going to happen one way or the other. Very easy way to get Rogier's bell bearing, just play through the game. Now Toph is a sorcerer that you meet inside the Church of Erith right after you defeat Godric the Grafted. It's very easy to find his location. All you have to do is go interact with him, and he will actually ask you to help him get back into the academy. Now you could always kill him if you want the bell bearing right away, or you need to get on top of the Church of the Cuckoo, which is a very specific way to get another key into the academy. From the debate parlor site of the Grace, follow the pathing I'm showing you, which you have to jump across a whole bunch of different buildings. It's not that difficult, but when you get on top of this building, make your way inside and jump around the scaffolds a little bit. You need to get on top of a very particular chandelier. It's not difficult to do, but it definitely is a little nerve-wracking if you haven't done it before. Pick up the item challenge will be another glintstone key into the academy. Return to Toph, give him the key, and then return to the schoolhouse classroom site of grace. From here, you're going to want to quickly go outside. Right around the corner, you're going to see Toph at a table. Unfortunately, he has died, but you can get his bell bearing along with some of his other personal items. Gostoc is also an NPC you meet very early on inside of Stormveil Castle. He's the groundskeeper, essentially. You'll meet him as soon as the first gate out of the Stormveil Castle, or right after you defeat Godric the Grafted. Only way you can get his bell bearing is by killing him, but having him alive has more inventory than the items that you'll get by turning in the bell bearing, so I recommend keeping him alive. Blackguard is a random tarnish that you can meet at the Broiled Prawn Shack inside of Liurnia. This is where you're going to mostly find him, or you can see him inside of the Altus Plateau once you progress the storyline enough with the Dung Eater. You can kill him here and get the bell bearing, or progress the Dung Eater questline and you'll get the bell bearing eventually when he's killed. Gowry is an old sorcerer that you find in Kale, and he's just kind of a random NPC that sits there, helps progress a different questline around Millennia. You can find him inside Gowry's shack. He's very easy to find. One, you can kill him, but again, if you progress through the storyline enough, he does eventually die, and you can find his bell bearing on him. Miriel is lovingly called the Turtle Pope. He can be found in the Church of Vows inside of the Liurnia location. Again, the only way you can get the bell bearing from him is if you kill him, and he's also another case of keeping him alive is better because you get more stuff from him when he is alive. Now, Bernahl can be found in a variety of different locations. The first place you'll find him is in Lingrave at the Warmaster's Shack before he moves to the Volcano Manor and progresses through that storyline as one of the main characters. Now, you can summon to fight him inside the Crumbling Ferrum Azula, but you don't get the bell bearing if you defeat him there. So your best bet to get this bell bearing is to defeat him at the Warmaster's Shack before he really gets upgraded a little bit more in the game. Patches is another character that you can find in the Volcano Manor, but also found in a variety of different locations. Plus, he has his own storyline that you can follow if you really want to. You can first find Patches in Murkwater Cave when you fight him as a mini-boss. Don't kill him because then that'll ruin the entire questline. You won't see him at Volcano Manor later. He then moves to the Liurnia of the Lakes, over to the Volcano Manor, and finally to the Shaded Castle after you have defeated Rykard, the main boss of the Volcano Manor. Throughout all this, you can kill him at any point. When you get to the Shaded Castle, you will actually see him on his deathbed, and he will eventually drop his bell bearing along with his armor. Sorceress Sellen has a very long questline as well. You can first find her at the Waypoint Ruins cellar inside of Lindell. She has you go around and find a bunch of different items for her, which really is easy to find once you go through the game a lot. I'll let you enjoy this questline for yourself because it takes you to a lot of cool locations that you have to unlock as you play the game. It's a good one. But it eventually comes to a point where you have to fight with her or against her, and if you want to get Sellen's bell bearing, you have to fight against her, or you can kill her at any time, whatever you want to do. Now, these final three are all linked to Ranni the Witch's questline, even a little bit. Now, the first one we're going to go across is Pidia, who can be found inside of Carrion Manor in the particular location that I'm showing you here with my little symbol. Jump off the cliff in the very particular area that I was showing you on the map because that's the only way you can safely get down on top of this castle. Simply jump your way all the way down until you get to this ladder. Slide down the ladder, you'll see a couple dead, kind of zombie-looking soldiers, and next to the only real table in this area, you'll see Pidia, who you could then shop with. Now, you can kill him outright right there, or you can progress Ranni's questline enough and return to this area. You'll actually see these soldiers have turned on Pidia, and then you can pick up his bell bearing from his dead body. Next, we have Seluvi, who is very easy to find. He's right next to the tower where Ranni is stationed, and this is another one where you just progress the storyline enough to a very particular point where he actually ends up being executed by Ranni herself. Now, he is attached to a couple different quest lines as well, so I would recommend trying going through those by doing a little bit of research of what he's attached to before progressing Ranni's storyline to where he becomes useless. And finally, we have War Counselor E.G.'s bell bearing, who could be found at the Road to the Manor site of Grace. He plays a pretty big part inside of Ranni's questline. He's also a blacksmith and someone that can sell you some of the smithing stones, so he's great to have, especially early on in the game. Get his bell bearing. Yes, you can fight him. I don't recommend it. He's not all that easy to fight, especially early on in the game, or complete Ranni's questline. You can return to him and he'll eventually look like this, attacked by some of the Black Knife assassins. On his anvil, you will see an item. This item is going to end up being E.G.'s bell bearing. You'll also get his mirror helm. So now that you have all the bell bearings, or at least all the bell bearings that you want to turn, and make your way back to the round table, hold to the two finger crones or the twin maiden husk, however you want to describe them, and you'll see an availability for you to offer bell bearings. All these bell bearings are going to unlock a lot of different items in the shop that can only be accessed when you turn in these bell bearings. So you can imagine the Glovewort pickers are going to offer a bunch of different upgrade items for different summons. Smithing stone ones are going to give you smithing stones. The merchant ones are going to give you some of the inventory of the merchants that you took it from. All those different things unlock a lot of different items. It's a really useful tool inside of Elden Ring. So at the end of the day, all these different bell bearings are giving you a much easier time with the DLC because these bell bearings will give you all different items that you would normally be looking for at an easy one-stop shop. The more of these that you get and turn into the finger reader crones is going to be that much easier for you to access when the DLC drops. I hope you guys did find this video helpful. If you did, please let me know by hitting the like and subscribe button. This took me a while to get through, so please let me know if I missed one of the bell bearings. I would love to know down in the comments. And let me know what kind of weapons you're looking forward to in the DLC. I started doing this because I wanted to get all the smithing stones available to me in that shop, but again, let me know down in the comments what you guys are looking forward to. Once again, I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I'll catch you in the next one.